Hi, I'm Ari, I'm the Oak Witch, and today's video I'm going to be going through some eco-friendly witchy tips. So before on my channel I've spoken about how being environmentally friendly is really important to me, and incorporating that into my craft is something which I really like doing. So I wanted to go through some ways in which you can be more environmentally friendly, be more eco-conscious into your practice. With the first tip being, if you haven't already, calculate your environmental footprint. There are a load of sites online. I'll link two which I quite like below in the description. But why I think this is important to your practice is if you're going to start embarking on this path to being more eco-conscious, a great way you can figure out what you're doing and how you're contributing to negatively impacting the earth is by doing these calculators. These footprint calculators aren't always perfect, but I think they're great for just baseline awareness to see what areas in your life you can make changes to and what you can adjust in order to be more eco-conscious. I will say, don't get too disheartened if the results are really bad. There are some eco-friendly practices which are really doable for some people and really inaccessible to some others, and making these changes and making these adjustments is not an overnight situation. It's a lifelong journey, and I just wanted to add that in there because sometimes going through these calculators can be a bit like overwhelming and intense. And the trick is not to think that you have to do everything straight away. Awareness is the first step, and take your time, make changes step by step. The reason why I think this is great for your practice is, like I said before, awareness is the first step in order to embark on your eco-friendly journey. And this in itself can be a devotional offering to your land spirits, to any spirits you work with, be it deity, ancestors, the earth. It is just a great way to build a relationship with nature, and this is something which is quite integral to a lot of people's practice. So yeah, I would definitely say it's a great thing you could incorporate into your craft. So my second eco-friendly witchy tip is to ethically source your crystals, herbs, essential oils, or any ingredients that you use in your practice. This is another tip which is more doable for some than others, and I don't want to present it as this really accessible thing to everyone because it is definitely not. But if you have the means, if you have the awareness, perhaps actually, for example, before you buy crystals, check if the shop actually ethically sources them. Using the crystals example, the way in which crystals are actually mined for this new age movement in which crystals are really popular is not sustainable, and it's not ethical at all. Not to mention certain countries have child labour, but also the way in which they actually extract the minerals. Sometimes they literally blow up the land and just decimate an environment for certain minerals and certain crystals. It's not sustainable, and I think it's definitely something to bear in mind at least. Shops will say whether or not they ethically source their minerals on their website. If they don't say anything, perhaps just send them an email or call them up and just ask them. If they don't give you an adequate answer, I mean, there's your answer. A good sign to me is whether or not the seller actually goes to those mines. A store in the UK called Little Gems is where the majority of my crystal collection has come from. Ethically sources their crystals, and they frequently go over to places like Brazil where they get their amethyst, and I think that's a really good sign. They're actually in direct contact with the mine, so it's things like that which I think are important to consider and to spend your money in an eco-friendly way. So obviously this is a great way you can incorporate this into your craft, because one, just being eco-friendly in general, you're building that relationship with nature, and that's something I'm going to be repeating throughout this video, but it is a way in which you can have it as a devotional act in your craft, in your practice, and especially in your pagan practice or religious practice in general, if that's also applicable to you. The next tip I essentially did a whole video on, which I'll link there. I'll link there. Got it right. It is the idea of disposing your spells, your offerings, your ritual ingredients in a eco-friendly way. I'm not going to repeat everything that I said in the video because what's the point in doing that? go watch it please. But I guess the main things I will repeat is don't throw your spell jars into rivers, into oceans, into any wild spaces, please. This I think is problematic for really obvious reasons, but if you're not aware, I guess, it's the idea of glass. Glass is not really biodegradable. One thing which I'll say, which kind of goes under this tip, is before you bury anything or throw anything in bodies of water or leave anything out in the wild, just research to see how biodegradable the ingredient is, the object is. And you'll be surprised. So if you're throwing that into a river, where do you think that's going to go? It doesn't disappear into some magical land. That stays in that river, that washes all the way down into the ocean, in which there's already tons and tons of plastic pollution and just general pollution in there already. I don't want to turn this into a rant, so I'll stop myself before I get to that point. But it is really, really important you think about these things before you perform magic. And I know that a lot of tradcraft, a lot of traditional practices, folk magic includes a lot of these spell methods, and I really don't want to devalue or invalidate anyone's cultural tradition that includes these methods, and I'm really sorry if it's come across that way. It's really not my intention. I also think it is important to be more eco-conscious. Given the current state of the earth, of our world, we are completely ruining it in so many different ways, on global scales, on local scales. It's a problem, and it really is. So I think, personally, if we can minimise our personal impact as much as we can, it will make a difference. Tip number 4 is to DIY your self-care products. I used to be so skeptical about making my own stuff because I always thought, it's never going to be as good as store-bought items. It just will never be as good. But I'm happy to say I was wrong. For example, for ages I have been looking to find a natural deodorant. Over the years I've gone through so many different brands of deodorant that are vegan, that are all natural ingredients, that is animal cruelty free, and also ones that are in a least amount of waste packaging as possible. And it's so hard. You can't find barely any. And I've gone through so many and none of them work. And it's frustrating until I made my own. But doing these things is, one, a great witchy practice to do, because you can charm specific things for different intentions. It can be a spell. For example, this balm that I have, it's a purification balm made of rosemary, sage and lavender. I have a banishing exfoliating scrub that I don't use every day, but I do use when I need to. My deodorant that I made is charmed with confidence. So many different ways in which you can make these DIY products witchy, and you're taking care of yourself because it's a self-care product, and it is a way in which you are reducing waste. My 5th eco-friendly witchy tip is to carry around with you a canvas tote bag and some gloves. When you're going out and about and you see litter on the floor, you can put on your gloves and you can put it in your tote bag and pick it up. I find that I make more excuses not to pick up litter when I don't have something to cover my hands to pick it up from, which sometimes it's fine, you can just pick it up and throw it in the bin. But other things like broken bits of glass or broken aluminium cans, I don't really want to pick that up and risk like hurting myself, and sometimes some things are really greasy and they're covered in stuff and you don't really want to pick it up. Picking up litter in itself is a great devotional act for, like I've said before, land spirits, for your ancestors, for any earth-related deity. It's such a good way to also just build that relationship with nature, and this is something which is important in your practice, especially if you're really connected to plant magic, the use of herbs and nature, and that's an integral part to your craft. My next tip is to reuse your spell jars, and there is an exception to this. I've spoken about this on my channel before. Reusing spell jars is, for example, with this one is this is a shaker jar that I made. I need to redo it actually, but this I can just peel off this wax and reuse it. I could just dispose of the herbs in a proper way. I'll clean the jar, I'll purify it, and then I'll cleanse it again, and I can reuse the jar for something else. And it's totally okay to do. Some people say that you shouldn't reuse spell jars, and I don't really see why not. The only time I wouldn't reuse a spell jar or just a sort of jar is, for example, in witches bottles that are designed to specifically like capture negative entities like spirits that are like causing you harm, or just any malefic or baneful energy sent your way. I don't want to open that back up. Or there's a risk, I guess. There's more of a risk of you doing so. So I can definitely understand if you don't really want to reuse that jar. In that case, you just have to throw it away and dispose of it in a less desirable way. But most of the time I feel like we're not dealing with that, and we're dealing with the odd like spell jars like this, and these are fine to reuse. Arguably, if you are warded enough and you're protected enough, you can dispose of those negative entity jars, but I can understand if people are a bit like, no, I don't really want to open that. I understand that. So my next tip only really applies to people who have gardens that have grass. And this is to keep a section of your garden completely wild. The idea is have a section of your garden which doesn't have too much, I guess, human traffic through it, and let it be completely wild. Let the grass grow, maybe plant some wildflowers as well. And what this will do, this will help biodiversity in invertebrates and also mammals. For example, in the UK, in Britain, we have a declining hedgehog population, and hedgehogs are so lovely, lovely little critters. But because of habitat fragmentation, you know, roads and residential builds and just general urbanisation, and the intensification of agriculture, so farming, their wild habitats are just kind of destroyed and non-existent. And they're nocturnal animals, so they travel a lot throughout the night. They travel miles and miles during the night, and this includes going through people's gardens. They're quite known for making appearances through your gardens. Another tip specifically for hedgehogs if you're in the UK is have little holes in your fences so they can travel through your garden, because it will help them a lot. So having these wild spaces, having these the wildflowers, the wild grass encourages the invertebrates, which is their food, their resource. And yeah, in general, it will just help your wildlife. And what does this do? This helps you build a relationship with your local land, your local flora, your local fauna. Especially if you're planting wildflowers, you can have that relationship with that plant and in your plant magic. And it's something which is just really lovely to do as well, and really eco-friendly. This also goes on to my next tip, in that it's good to have bird feeders or like a bird bath in your garden if it's applicable for you to do so. This again helps the biodiversity of birds, and it's a lovely offering to any land spirits, any spirits you work with closely, and also any deity that is associated with wildlife, with wild spaces. For example, what comes to me is Artemis and Kronos. It's a great way to have that offering, and also just to build a relationship with your local wildlife. It's really lovely. Tip number 9, I think we're on, and that is to buy your witchy items secondhand. And this is really good because it helps us actually reuse the items in a society and sort of helps that circular motion, as opposed to the throwaway culture a lot of Western countries kind of have nowadays. We're so heavy on consumerism and just consuming as much as possible, as quickly as possible. And we buy a lot of things just for a short amount of time, and we don't actually invest in things that are going to last us a while. And this is easier said than done for some people. I think sometimes eco-friendly tips and pushing for other people to be eco-friendly can be a little bit classist sometimes, especially when you're forcing these ideals down people who can't necessarily afford and just need to get what they can. And that's completely okay, that's completely valid. I don't want to ever pretend that it's really easy for everyone, because it's definitely not. However, like I said before in a previous tip, if you have the means, I think it's really great to be mindful of investing in things that will last a while. But also, I think something that's actually quite affordable is buying secondhand. And there are so many different things you can get secondhand. You can get candle holders, you can get bowls, incense sensors and holders, you can get just candles secondhand, unused candles that people bought and just don't want to use anymore. And you can get books as well secondhand, which is really, really good. My experience is obviously in the UK, and if anyone else has any resources or secondhand shops in any other countries, perhaps link them down below and help other people find resources, because my only experiences is living in England. And if you are in the UK, I recommend just checking out charity shops, and I guess this applies to a lot of countries as well. But yeah, check out charity shops. A really great online place, it's an app as well, is Vinted. I really recommend this, especially for books. There are lots of great books on there. These two are ones I got recently on Vinted, and these were like £3 each. Which is really good, bearing in mind this is retail price £9 and this is retail price, that says $19 on there, so really good deal. And yeah, so I really recommend getting stuff secondhand. It really helps us live in that circular society. Eco-friendly actions like this will always help you improve your relationship to the earth, because you are outwardly taking action to living a more sustainable lifestyle, to protecting the earth, to engaging in conservation, and it's a really lovely thing to do. My 10th eco-friendly witchy tip is to stop using glitter and spells. Glitter is a microplastic. Microplastics are bad for the environment because scientists haven't really even found a great way to get rid of microplastics in the ocean. So if we can't get rid of it, it's going to stay there forever. Weirdly, there's lots of emphasis on adding like glitter to candles, and you see them a lot in like handmade candles, witchy candles. I see them on Etsy, I see them all over the place online, and it's a lovely, cute aesthetic, but it's not eco-friendly. It's a microplastic, and you don't need glitter. And eco-friendly glitter as well is greenwashing. There are lots of eco-friendly glitter which isn't actually eco-friendly and still does harm to the environment. So just bear that in mind as well. So yeah, those are my eco-friendly witchy tips. I want to stress again that implementing a completely 100% eco-friendly lifestyle is not really attainable, and a lot of eco-friendly practices is really inaccessible for a lot of people, especially when you're considering people with disabilities. I don't want to present this idea that if you don't boycott plastic you're a really bad person. Like, that's obviously not the case. Sometimes you just have to do what you have to do, and that's okay. The point of this video is to just give a little bit of awareness to those who can, to those who have the means, have the money, have the time, have the energy. You can implement these eco-friendly options, then do so. I recommend doing so. But please don't feel disheartened if you can't. I'm not saying you're a bad witch if you can't do these things. You're completely valid still. Just wanted to present some eco-friendly options if you're able to implement them. So yeah, I hope you have enjoyed my second video in my eco-friendly witchcraft series. I am keen to do more of these. But yeah, so thank you so much for watching, and I'll see you in the next one. Bye!